Hello, my amazing humanitarians. This is the part 2, a Q&A of how to volunteer overseas for free. I hope you enjoy the video. So here we go. These are questions that have risen from my posts on our Volunteer Overseas Facebook group, as well as the other websites I've put, as a Q&A if anybody had any other questions about volunteering overseas. The first question I got was position where kids are welcome. Right off the top of my head, I only know one major main organization in Europe, which is the EVAS, and I'll put the links to anything I discussed today in the comments. They do cater to youth volunteering. At the same time, in my experience with the organizations I've volunteered with around the world in the last year and a half, as well as back home in my state of Florida, in this hometown of Miami, there is different opportunities for kids to go ahead and volunteer. It really boils down to the type of volunteering activity you will be doing. If you're going to be doing obviously construction work, it wouldn't be conducive to allow your kids to come with you. They wouldn't be much use to you or to the organization rather, and of course, they could get hurt. Even things like doing hospice, like I did in Burma or Myanmar, excuse me. I don't know if a kid will be ready to see those type of activities. So when it comes to youth volunteering options, there is definitely some organizations around there that cater to the youth, and I'll put the links to the one I mentioned as well as to any other ones I may come across. But use your own judgment. If you think your kid can handle the experience, then great. And I'll always contact the nonprofit and then make sure they allow the kids. And usually they'll let your kids sign up as long as you sign the parental consent form. So let's move on to the next question. How does one get into volunteering? What kind of experience or training do you need? So how does one get into volunteering? As far as for me and my personal take, it's something that, just crossed my path one time in my life. I was listening to a radio commercial about how to get more involved in the community. And I felt this longing of living a life of purpose. That's my personal take on volunteering and getting into it. So once I heard an opportunity to do it, I did my first farm share program in my hometown of Miami, and I fell in love with volunteering and the way of giving back to others. So as far as getting started, start locally. Granted, I'm sure a lot of you want to travel around the world and, may have an adventure like I have, or countless others, amazing souls who are doing the same thing that I'm doing and volunteering around the world. But please, before you take this endeavor and go ahead and volunteer around the world, make sure you made an impact at home. Because at home is where it matters. If everybody volunteered where we lived, there wouldn't be no need for international volunteers. And please don't get this point misconstrued in any way. I commend anybody who goes overseas, but a lot of us, unfortunately, don't take the time to help out when we're at home and are so eager to jump to another country to help out, and we've never even taken that time to volunteer where we live and where we're most needed, where we're grown. So just keep that in mind. As far as what kind of training, well, it's pretty evident on to this point depends on what you're going to be doing to volunteer. If you're going to, go volunteer like an animal shelter, don't need much training to walk a dog. Now, if you're going to go, let's say work in hospice, depending what type of care you're going to be providing, it would be nice to have some sort of medical training. If not, you may be sitting back there twiddling your thumbs while the other volunteers are actually helping because they have the experience in the medical background. So as far as training, essentially you don't need any particular training, but it is going to depend on the volunteering activity you choose. So always keep that in mind. The more skills you have, obviously, the more opportunities will become available to you. I can tell you firsthand, without a shadow of doubt, anybody with medical expertise is always welcome in pretty much any organization around the world. That is what's most needed, doctors, nurses, and so forth. And then second to that, in my experience, carpenters, any skill of trade like that, for building schools and construction work. Those are the top 2 requirements. So if you don't have these skills, they're probably something you should take the time to at least familiarize yourself with these trades, so you can be better equipped to help those in need. How do you find a long-term project? I tried to apply for volunteer opportunity in UK, but it seems they accept people only from the EU countries. So as far as applying for long-term projects, you just have to keep looking. In fact, I'm not sure what challenges arose, but majority of these projects overseas are always long-term, at least a minimum of 2 weeks to go ahead and volunteer. And I get this a lot. I applied for this organization, I didn't hear back. You have to keep trying. I'm sorry, it doesn't happen the way you think it does. I can tell you countless stories how many times I've applied to organizations that's never heard back. You simply keep sending another email, and then you move on, and then you wait. Unfortunately, a lot of these nonprofits are extremely busy, hence why they need volunteers, and sometimes they don't get to you at the time that you expect. So you just have to keep moving forward and be patient, or if you're really interested in working with that organization, be persistent. Find the emails, call them, do what you can, contact another individual who has volunteered with that organization. Okay, so the next question is, where can 6-year-olds volunteer without sharing a room with 10 to 20-year-olds? So I feel your pain. I'm 33, and at the last volunteering event, I think it was in Nepal. I was, I guess, in the older of the pack. So the majority of the volunteers there are in their 20s or early 20s or late teens. Now, one, I can tell you, it depends on the time of year you volunteer. Here's what I've learned. If you volunteer during the summer, guess what? Everybody who's in college and the kids in high school, graduating, and so forth are able to go ahead and volunteer. So first thing, if you have some sort of issue with volunteering with younger people, don't really see why you should, but if you do, I understand maybe you want to relate with somebody who's closer in your age, stay out of volunteering during the summer months. Just makes sense. During the summer months is when they're free, so hence they'll be around the world as well, volunteering and looking for opportunities to help out. So the main thing is to volunteer when they're in school, which would be off season and not in summer. And also, it depends on the type of volunteering activity that you do. There's certain volunteering activities that maybe the teenagers or kids are in their early 20s would be would not be inclined to be volunteering. In my case, though, I don't think it really matters. What age you are, people are going to volunteer anywhere else. So let's just keep it simple here. In this case, stay away from the summer if you want to stay away from kids volunteering. That's my best advice to you. And now that I think about it, I won't keep going on this. If you really have an age discrimination issue with volunteering with younger kids, just don't volunteer during the summer, volunteer in the off season, and that should solve your entire dilemma for you, okay? So, next person wrote, I'm Egyptian, parentheses Arab, will I be accepted to volunteer, or will my background be a problem? Now, this is an interesting question. I won't say that a certain organization will prohibit you from volunteering because of your background. More than likely that won't happen. However, getting a visa for a country will be a different subject. And obviously for most countries, if not all, you always need some sort of visa. And with the visa, they're going to ask you what country you are from. I know firsthand, certain countries I've visited don't allow certain individuals or make the process rather tedious, where it basically inhibits the person from applying for the visa and even going to the country to begin with. So as far as volunteering with an organization because you're of a certain descent or from a certain country, I wouldn't necessarily say the country will prohibit you, the organization will prohibit you, but more so the country itself. So just check with the country, their visa requirements, and if they have any conditions with the country that you are coming from or that you were born with. let's see here. What are some good organizations to go through? There's so many organizations. As of current count, I've done over 17 organizations around the world, and I've done quite a few back home. So, I mean, there's not any ones in particular that stand out for me that can tell you they're better than other. They all provide, just the same benefit as the other ones do when it comes to the long opportunities in my experience. As usually, if you're with a good organization, they can provide you the free food and the free accommodation, or if you are going to stay with them and they do charge something a minimal fee. But at the end of the day, it does come down to research, okay? I'm not going to single any particular organization that I volunteered out here, because I think a lot of them do a great job. And just do your due diligence, read the reviews, try to contact other people who have volunteered with the organization and ask them to tell you what they think about it, okay? Or what was their experience. That's my, advice on what organization to volunteer with. Just do your research. A lot of them are good. And just, ask individuals who have volunteered with them before. Is probably going to be your best bet to get that answer for, the volunteer organization you want to work with. Do you volunteer through programs or the NGO themselves? How do you financially do this? What is the minimum amount of time you should spend at the NGO to be beneficial? Okay, so for the most part, I volunteer with the NGOs directly. However, I do use sites to help me out. I'm going to go ahead and list those sites again. I did in the first video. Things like Workaway, HelpX, Working Traveler, even my own Facebook group now. I've gotten people to go ahead and post on there. So just a lot of researching, but ultimately I just prefer to work with the NGO directly and no middleman. But those other sites I did mention, what they do, they basically are a middleman within or a platform, rather, I should say, which allows you to connect to these individuals who maybe didn't have a voice to speak or a platform to speak on with. How do I afford to do this? I get that a lot. So I've been fortunate enough I work online, okay? I own my own website, smilingtimes.com, which encourages people to volunteer overseas selling shirts. At the same time, though, I do also do freelance work, such as running websites for other individuals, or do back-end work for a couple of my friends who own online companies. My suggestion to you is, if you do want to do the volunteering and continue doing the volunteering without having to work online, having to work, go back home and work and come back, is to find a job online. Sites like Freelancer, Upwork, Fiverr.com, you essentially can sell your skills for a rate that you determine, and this will allow you to make your income while you're traveling, and it's a great resource, and I highly recommend it, so you don't have to stop traveling. You can continue to do this for however long you'd like. Now, the question is, how long should you stay with an NGO? Now, this is entirely up to you, okay? But please keep this in mind. When you decide to go ahead and volunteer with a nonprofit, okay, you don't want to waste their time, and you don't want to waste your time. If you're going to go ahead and volunteer with, let's say, so-and-so NGO, and you see that they spend 5 days training you, and you're going to be there a week and a half, you're really doing the service for the other volunteer who may be training you, or the other individual, for you to be there 3 days, and it takes 5 days for them to train you. So keep that in mind. Each situation is different. Obviously, I can give you the analogy of the dog shelter. It doesn't take rocket science to walk a dog at these shelters or clean up the cages, and you can go there for a couple days. No big deal. But, if you're going to go ahead and, let's say, do construction work for building schools, building homes, and a day or two, you're not going to make a difference for anybody. The time they're going to take to go ahead and train you to maybe use the tools or get on a certain project involved is just not worth their time and your time. So essentially, use your own common sense. If it's something easy that, doesn't require any training, a little effort on the nonprofit's part, then, spending a week or two won't hurt them, and it could help them. But if they're going to spend a few days training you just on that, spend the time, give them the time that they deserve typically I would recommend a minimum of 2 weeks with any volunteer opportunity, because at that point, at least you get to understand what the nonprofit's about and also enjoy your time with the locals and get to actually see a different side of that country that you're residing in and interact with the people and actually get to feel like you're part of the community when you're there for at least 2 weeks or longer. You know, this is my personal take. Again, just my advice. You know, do with it what you want, but this is what I've learned has become most beneficial to me. How does free work, and why aren't there free volunteering opportunities more widely known? So for the free volunteering, usually it's pretty straightforward. The organization allows you to volunteer. They don't charge anything, and majority of the time, you know, food and accommodation will be taken care of. If not, you may have to pay a small fee for food or accommodation. Essentially, you're just required to, you know, give maybe 4 to 8 hours per day, depends on the organization, in return for what they offer for free. As far as why they're not widely known, well, they're not going to go ahead and spend money on Facebook advertising or marketing on Google to get you to their organization. And they can't even afford to pay you at this point. So that's like individuals like myself and countless others around the world who are putting these resources together to make this more easily accessible for you. You know, as I continue about traveling around the world, I will continue sharing all the volunteer organizations I work with, and I learn about them constantly all the time, and that's why I can continue to put them on the Facebook group. So as far as they're more widely not more widely known, it's just, you know, again, they're not going to go ahead and spend their money on advertising. It doesn't make sense for a nonprofit to do that, but you know, as I learn more about them and I get more resources, I'll gladly share them with you. And then as far as the next question we have, well, I guess that was it. That was our last question. So this is part 2 of how to volunteer overseas for free. If you have any other questions, please put them in the comments. I'll be happy to make a part 3. Aside from that, as always, nothing but love and gratitude. And, you know, all you guys are amazing, and keep doing this together. We will change the world.